Now let's take a look at making our menu animate in from the side of our app. So what I want to do is I actually want to make use of the view modal component example, which can be found in Views docs. But when we click on this button, you can see that a modal appears, and when we close that modal, it also animates out really nicely. So believe it or not, this actually has about 80% of what we need, and then we can just convert this into our menu component. So let's take a look at the HTML, and you can see we're making use of view transitions here to transition between conditional elements. So I'm going to copy everything within the transition over here, and we're going to paste that into our template. I'm going to ignore everything else below that. So let's just comment out our navigation, and we'll paste in the transitions. The next thing I want to do is skip over the JavaScript tab because we don't need that. And then I'm also going to copy the CSS. So let's copy this, and we're going to paste that in a style tag in our component file. So let's open up the style tag, and I also want that to be scoped, and then I'll paste in the CSS over here. Now our file's looking a little bit messy, so I'm just going to run yarn lint, and that should fix it for me. Great, so now we've got everything spaced out a little bit better. Now let's take a look at the transition element over here, because what this is doing is it's transitioning smoothly between any conditional elements that are placed inside of it. So if I were to take this if statement and paste that on the div over here, and now if I change the data within our app, so if we toggle between having show menu as true or false, you can see that our modal animates in and out. So that is quite handy. And what's happening here is we're actually giving our transition a name of modal, and then that's applying all of the modal CSS down here to create that transition. So now we know how that works. Let's go back up to our modal and get rid of any code that we don't actually need. So I'm going to remove the modal header, the modal body, and the modal footer. So we don't need any of that. And now we can actually take our navigation, and we can paste this into the modal, and I can get rid of the conditional statement over here. So now if we animate into our menu, that looks a little bit better. Now what I want to do is actually make our menu appear on new lines, so we can convert this to a list. Now what I want to do is change all references of modal to menu. So I'm going to just find and replace modal to menu, and we'll replace all. And that should have changed all of the references between modal and menu. The next thing we can do is start converting a lot of these classes to Tailwind CSS, because if we take a look at the menu mask class here and scroll down to the CSS, you can see that we've got position fixed, and I know that Tailwind actually has a class for that, and it is called fixed. So I'm going to just replace that, and then we can get rid of the CSS for that. I'm also going to add in a Z index, so we'll remove the Z index CSS here, and then we'll add in a Z index of Z50. And of course, if I ever wanted to increase this and make my menu appear a little bit higher on the page, I could always add in a custom Z index to Tailwind. But I think for now, we'll leave it as Z50. Then I'm also going to replace the top and left positions. So Tailwind actually has classes for that, which is going to be top 0 and left 0. Then we can also replace the width and the height, because Tailwind has classes for these two, and those will both be W full and H full for width of 100% and a height of 100%. And then we can also get rid of display table. We won't need that. And we can actually change that to display flex instead, because that's what the flex box was made for. So now you can see that our menu has actually moved. The next thing I want to do is change the CSS for the menu wrapper. So I'm going to just take a look at that down here. Now this has got a display table and a vertical line middle. We don't actually need this because this was old CSS that people used to use before the Flexbox. So I'm going to remove that, which means we can actually also remove the entire element. So let's just take the container and paste that over the wrapper. So we don't need the wrapper anymore. Now you'll notice that our menu is going to look quite different, but we've got the spacing on the side, so we can probably get rid of that by adjusting some of the classes that are in this menu container, or some of the rules that are in this menu container. Let's get rid of the width 300, and I'm actually going to change that to W4-5, which is going to be a width of 80% for Tailwind. The next thing we're going to do is remove the margin, and that should make our menu appear on the side. Then we can also change the padding. So instead of using a padding rule down here, we can use Tailwind's padding rule of P6 just to add in some padding there. Then we can get rid of the background color, and we can actually make use of Tailwind's background color of BG white, which will make the background white. Then we can also get rid of border radius, and that will just sharpen up the corners a little bit, but that was barely noticeable anyway. And then we can remove the box shadow, because Tailwind actually has a class for this, and that is going to be shadow, or if you want to have even more of a shadow, you can use shadow LG. Okay, now we can get rid of the font family rule because we don't need that, but we're going to keep the transition because that is going to be what controls how our menu animates in. I'm also going to remove the menu body, menu footer, and menu button because we removed all of those elements. And now we've got the CSS that manages our transition. So what I'm going to do is just get rid of the comment over here, because of course that's explaining what this CSS does. But what we need to do now is change this to be, instead of a scale, a translate on the x-axis. And I'm going to translate that from -100%. So that is going to translate from the negative side of the x-axis into our page. And we'll do the same thing for a normal transition as well. And now when our variable changes, our menu should slide in and out from the side. So how cool is that? And we can also adjust this to be slightly slower and this to be slightly faster, just so that the animation looks a little bit better. Now I want to convert this background color over here to a Tailwind background color. So Tailwind doesn't have any transparent black colors at the moment, which is the background color that's displaying behind our modal or our menu over here. So let's create a rule for this. I'm going to get rid of the CSS here, and we're going to take a look at extending the Tailwind config to create a transparent black color there. So what we're going to do is go over to Tailwind's docs, and we're going to search for background color and scroll all the way down to the bottom here. And you can see we've got a section on customizing Tailwind. So what I want to do is just create a new color with this code. So we're going to paste that in just above the extend. And now we'll also add in a background color of black 50 for black transparent 50, and this can be or have a value of RGBA 000 and 0.5. And that should have added a black 50 color. So if we go back over to our header navigation and on our mobile menu here, just add in a class of black 50 or BG black 50, that should have a transparent black color for us. Great, so now we've converted a color to Tailwind, so we know how to create our own colors in Tailwind. let's take a look at the next step of our menu over here, which is going to be to add a close button, because at the moment our menu is open and there's nothing I can do to close this. So what we can do is make it that if you click on the black section over here, that closes our menu. So let's actually just run yarn lint to tidy up our code a little bit. And now we'll add in a click event to the div. So let's create a click event here. And when this is clicked, we want to close the menu. So let's go ahead and create a method for closing the menu. And this is going to take our menu and set this show menu to false. Right, so now when we open up our menu and click on the black background there, that closes the menu. But we have another problem here, which is if we click inside of our menu, that is also going to be closing the menu. So we need to stop that event from propagating down. So we're going to add in a click event for the container over here. And I'm just going to say @click, and we'll set that to stop. So @click.stop should stop the event propagation from propagating down. So now when we open up the menu and click on the background, that closes the menu. But if we click within our menu, that won't close the menu. What we can also do is add in a close button, an X button. So if we go back over to Font Awesome and look for a close button, we should be able to find an exit or a times. So if we just use FA times in our Font Awesome library, so let's add in FA times over here, and let's also add that here. And now we can actually make use of FA times in our template. So if we go back over to our header, we can copy and paste this Font Awesome icon and paste that just above our menu here. And then this can also close the menu when clicked. And we want this to be a times icon. So now if we open our menu, we've got a times icon that when we click on that should also close the menu. Now the positioning of this is a little bit weird. So what we're going to do is position this absolutely in the top corner, so top right. And then I'm just going to give this a class of relative so that will contain our icon. So now we've got an icon in the top corner here. And before we end off this video, I just want to say thank you for watching. Pause the video now. There's a bunch of things that I'd like you to do. So read the text on screen. I'd like you to join the channel, buy the merch, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.